at intervals during the day at Chelmsford Magistrates Court. First to arrive was Michael Steele, aged 53, from Great Bentley. His application for bail was turned down by magistrates. Next was Jack Wones, aged 35, from Brockford in Suffolk. His bail application was also turned down. There was no bail application for Darren Nicholls.
While giving evidence for the prosecution, Darren Nicholls had been posed and confident, but under cross-examination, as cracks in his story began to appear, so his answers became less precise, less convincing, and less specific. Has anyone told you to keep it vague? Graham Parkins, QC, the highly experienced barrister acting on behalf of Michael Steele, asked one day, frustrated with the inability of Nicholls to answer a straight question. I put it to you that the final version of what the jury has heard is not your own work. You have been prompted, helped, and guided by other police officers. That's not true. Mr. Nicholls, are you a truthful man by nature? I don't think you can say I am. But I'm telling the truth now. But Mr. Nicholls, how does one know when you are lying and when you are not? You are both a blatant and persistent liar, an optimist, I suggest, grasping at straws to save yourself. By December 6th, you knew Mr. Steele very well and had the means to make up a plausible story about him and his colleagues. Yeah, if I wished to do so, but they did do the killings. Are you falsely accusing these men when you know who was really responsible? They did it. Do you want to protect yourself and others who are not before this court? No, they did it. Were you involved in these murders yourself with other men? Look, I've told you, I picked them up from the murders they committed. I was badly affected by it, Nicholls replied angrily. Were you indeed? You told these officers you didn't really want anything to do with Mr. Steele after the killings. You had been duped into ferrying the men to and from a triple murder, a triple shooting. If you are telling the truth, an awful evil thing has been done to you. Yeah, that's right. Mr. Steele would hardly be on your Christmas card list. No. Can you explain then why you sent his family a card for Christmas 1995? Nicholls said nothing. Steele, sitting in the dock, allowed himself a wry smile. Parkins continued. You also gave this man you claim was a killer a case of canned beer and a bottle of wine. Nicholls shuffled uneasily in the witness box. Yeah, he mumbled, but only because he gave my children a present. Oh yes, a radio-controlled aeroplane, which you went flying at Mr. Steele's house. Isn't it true? You then took your children to the house of this triple killer so they could watch the rabbits running in the garden. Yeah, said Nicholls, softly. In one of his early police interviews, Nicholls had mixed up the order of events. Knowing that Tate had borrowed some money off the Joneses, and knowing that Tate had later threatened to kill Steele, Nicholls implied that the threatening calls from Ireland that Michael Steele and Sarah Saunders received had come before the murders and were part of the reason Steele decided to kill Tate. Graham Parkins was quick to seize on this error as further evidence of police colluding with Nicholls to conduct the perfect story. You now know the Irish threat was in reality 2 policemen. You were told that by other officers, weren't you? No. You made a massive blunder when you put them forward as the motive, and that claim didn't appear in your later witness statements. Was that because the officers interviewing you said, hold on, the Irish brothers were policemen, and then he rang up after the killings? No. You'd have to be in my situation to understand. You try and explain it to someone when you have been a witness to a murder. I was very confused. I hated every minute of being in the witness box. It made me feel ill for hours afterwards. The worst part was the walk in each morning from the toilet to the courtroom, knowing that all those eyes were on me, and knowing what was to come. It didn't take too long for me to realise that it didn't matter what I actually said, I still got a hard time. Yes was always going to be wrong. No was always going to be wrong. Every word was used against me. Whatever I said, I was a liar. I heard it all the time. Liar, liar, liar. It made me really angry every time they doubted what I was saying was the truth. They even argued things that weren't in any doubt. But that's just what they wanted. I think they wanted me to lose it. to go out of control, because then they'd be able to go through the jugular and make me look like some kind of thug in front of the jury. Full credit to Parkins, he did a fucking wonderful job. He tied me up in knots, made me think the sun was shining, even though it was pissing down with rain. I remember one time I said to him, "Listen, you don't know what's happened. I do. I was there." He just laughed and called me a liar again. I suppose you have to expect it, because they are fighting for their lives, but it was still a horrible thing to have to go through though. Innocent or guilty, it doesn't matter what you are. As soon as you step foot in that witness box, it's only you that's on trial, no one else. Just after midday, on Thursday the 15th of January, 1998, the jury of 8 women and 4 men retired to consider its verdict. As Steele and Womes waited anxiously in the cells below, the news came just before 4 p.m. The dead failed to reach a verdict. The jury were sent away to a hotel and told to return to court the following day. The next day, it happened again, and the jury were told to return to court on Saturday to see if they could reach a verdict. By the middle of Saturday afternoon, it was clear they would not, and their stay at the hotel was extended yet again. Mr. Justice Hidden decided to give them Sunday off, hoping to give the jury the chance to relax by taking them all on an organised trip. They returned on Monday afternoon, happy, but still unable to agree, and stayed at the hotel yet again. In any criminal case, reading a jury is almost impossible. Some say the longer the deliberations go on, the more likely the verdict will be not guilty. Others say extended deliberations show that not all the members of the jury are in agreement and are attempting to convince one another of their version of the truth. But often, as with the case with the Retterdon trial, it is simply that the jury are going over every item of evidence before taking their vote. They ask for additional material, to see certain pictures, to read transcripts of certain interviews once more. On Tuesday, 20th of January, 1998, after 5 full days of deliberation, the jury returned its unanimous verdict: guilty. I think I got the call within about 10 seconds of the verdict going out. All I could think was, yes, it's all over. Thank fuck for that. But it faded really quickly once I started to think about it properly. You wait for the end of the trial, but once it's over, you realise it's not really over at all. There was another trial coming up, and I knew that Mick and Jack would put an appeal in straight away. It was a victory, knowing the jury saw through their lies and believed me, but it was pretty hollow. Deep down, I was really pleased. Of course I was, but I couldn't show it. I actually felt really bad about the whole thing. There was a time when I really looked up to Mick. It was almost a father figure to me, and I felt like I'd really let him down. It's so stupid. All this nonsense about the criminal code and all that. None of it makes any sense. And when you've been mixing in these circles for a while, it does start to get to you. Supergrass shot. The words in neat black bold letters on the front page of The Sun sent a chill down the spine of Darren Nicholls and sent his friends and family rushing to the phone. There was no picture on the front page. No one knew where I was living or what name I was under, so loads of people thought it was me. I got dozens of calls on my mobile and messages on my pager from people who were convinced I was dead. I think it drove home to a lot of people just how serious my situation is, and it really worried me as well. It's all very well having someone tell you there's a contract out on your head, that people are looking for you because they want to kill you, but you can't really take it seriously. But when this happened, it just made me think, fuck, supergrasses do get shot. There are people out there who will spend years trying to track you down and then put a couple of bullets in your head. If I was stunned by the news, then Sandra was completely devastated. It was horrible. She just sat there and didn't say a word for ages and ages. Then we had this really serious discussion about what we would do if there was an emergency, whether we needed more locks on the windows and that kind of thing. We were both trying to stay calm and keeping it together for the sake of the kids, but inside we were both absolutely shitting ourselves. And the worst part was that I had another trial coming up. There was going to be 7 more people who would be totally pissed off with me, who would want their names to go on a list of people who would like to see me dead. It wasn't much of a summer, I can tell you. I've always known that I'd have to spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, but I always assumed that with time, the threat would start to fade. Now, I know better. No matter what I'm doing, where I am, or who I'm with, I know I can never completely relax. In September 1998, Darren Nicholls found himself back in custody as he gave evidence at Woolwich Crown Court as Russell Tate and 6 others faced trial for drug smuggling. Although they were initially involved in bringing the cannabis across the English Channel and transporting it to the garage owned by Steele's mother, it had long been decided that Steele and Wholmes would not face trial themselves. They were already serving 15 years for murder, and even if they were convicted, the additional sentence would be concurrent. It would be a pointless exercise, and the cost of the security operation needed to bring them to court, let alone to keep Steele and Russell Tate separate in the dock, made the whole thing pointless. There was also the fact if Steele and Wholmes had appeared, the jury would have not been able to know about their previous convictions. All the evidence gathered as a result of the murder investigation would not be admissible. As the legal arguments rumbled on, Nicholls got more and more bitter about his involvement and more frustrated about the delay in his sentencing. I wasn't interested in the second trial. I didn't want to go through it all again. The only reason I became a witness in the first place was to put away those two for saying they were going to kill me. Then all of a sudden, everyone seemed to think I wanted to grass the whole world up, that I was getting some kind of kick out of it. The truth was, I'd hated what I'd become, and I wanted to get on with my life. On Friday the 13th of November, 1998, Darren Nicholls returned to custody one last time before making a brief appearance at Woolwich Crown Court before Judge Hidden for his sentencing. I have no doubt that within the evidence provided by this man, a terrible crime would have never been solved and 2 killers would still be walking the streets. In return, Mr. Nicholls would undoubtedly have to spend the rest of his life in fear. I have no hesitation in awarding him full credit for the assistance he provided both police and customs in this matter. Nicholls was sentenced to 15 months. The time he'd already served in prison while awaiting trial more than covered it. He had paid his debt to society. He had finally become a free man. On the 14th of May, 1996, Darren Nicholls, a little-known petty criminal from Braintree, Essex, disappeared from the face of the earth. But it wasn't until the 2nd of March, 1999, that he finally, officially became someone else. There was no ceremony or celebration of the day that the police turned up with his new passport and driving licence. Just a quick handshake and a request that in future he stay out of trouble. Today, Darren Nicholls lives somewhere in the United Kingdom, in an average house, on an average street, where nothing, least of all Darren Nicholls himself, stands out from the crowd. He and his wife both work in reasonable interesting jobs, have a growing circle of friends, and are slowly saving up for a second car. No one has a real idea about his past, what he has been through, and the things he has seen. And that's just the way he intends to keep it. That's pretty much all of it. That's the whole story of how I went from living in a shitty little town with a shitty car and not much of a future to where I am today. Living in a different shitty little town with a different shitty car, not much of a future, and a passport, no matter how many times I look at it, still seems to belong to someone else. I really don't know what I think or how I feel about it, all that stuff that happened. I guess with the 2 big trials finished and Steele and Wholmes and the others banged up, I should be happy. But I'm not. No way. I have this terrible guilt. I feel like I'm a right bastard. I know I shouldn't feel guilty, but I just can't help it. It's going to be a long, long time before I can feel good about myself. When I went to court for the last time to have the judge hand down my sentence, the usher asked me what the toughest part of being a protected witness was. He guessed it was going to be giving up the good life. I had to laugh. I wasn't much of a criminal. I never had the wads of cash to spend, or got the best tables in the local bars and restaurants, or even came close to dripping with gold. Leaving my old life behind was easy. The real challenge has been trying to cope with the new one. The nightmares about the murder, the time I spent in prison, the fear that someone's going to try and track me and my family down, it's all a cakewalk compared to the strain of living a lie. It means I can never really relax, never lower my guard. I just spend the whole time on edge, waiting for someone to say, "Hey, don't I know you from Braintree? Hang on, you're Darren Nicholls." A couple of weeks ago, I was in this local pub with a bunch of friends, and there was a telephone call at the bar. The landlord called out, "Is there a Darren in here?" So I jumped up and said, "Yes," started walking over. I was almost at the bar when I remembered that I didn't have that name anymore, that I would become someone else. I had to pretend that I was drunk and making a joke. I think I got away with it, but I can't help thinking that at least for one of my friends, it has sown the seeds of doubt. There are people around who already think there's something a bit strange about me, that my background doesn't quite add up. All it will take now is another piece of the jigsaw puzzle to fall into place, and I could feel myself having to move all over again. In truth, I feel like my problems are only just beginning. There's one other question that people always want an answer to: just what you get for becoming a supergrass. I know there are people out there, most of them relatives of Steele and Wombs, who still believe that I've been paid some vast amount of money and that I'm now living in the lap of luxury. Well, it's time I came clean. Forget the rumours about £300,000 in my bank account, my villa in Spain, my brand new sports cars and all the other benefits. That's nothing. The truth of becoming a supergrass, of signing your soul over to the police, is that you get much more than that. In fact, there's so much more, it would take another book to list it all. So I'll just tell you about the three things, the ones that matter the most. I get to never see my parents again. I get to spend the rest of my life lying to my kids. I get to never ever feel completely safe. And then there's the money. During the trial, and when I was out on bail, I got exactly £48 a week, because that's what I would have got if I was on the dole. And since the trial's finished, I haven't had a penny. Don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. I got my freedom, and I'm thankful for that. I've also got the chance to start over with a clean record, but that's where it ends. I know there are people out there who think that I only said what I said in court because of the deal that I struck with the police. Well, surprise, surprise, that's absolutely right. But that doesn't mean I wasn't telling the truth. The biggest difference between my new life and my old life is that there's no safety net. If I run out of money before the month runs out, I can't think about selling a few ounces of puff to make up the difference or getting involved in some dodgy money scam. From now on, I have to do things by the book. I have to be a whole new clean living person, and that's not easy at all, especially if you spent your whole life bending the rules. So the only thing to do with my old life is to put it behind me, to forget about it completely. I don't think about it. I don't look at the photographs, and I don't even talk about it. Not even to Sandra. It's just too dangerous. Because of all the shit that happened, of all the weird crazy stuff that went on, there were still some good times. And thinking about the good times just scares the shit out of me. I might start to miss them.